The rain had just begun to fall on the cracked sidewalks of a small, Midwestern town when Marcus Daniels heard the faint sound of heavy boots echoing outside his apartment door. It was late, far past the hour when anyone had reason to knock. For a moment, Marcus froze, his instincts telling him that whatever was coming wasn't good. And he was right. The next second, a fist slammed hard against his door, followed by a voice laced with authority and disdain. "Open up police business." Marcus wasn't a stranger to run-ins with law enforcement. A black man in his late 30s. He carried himself with quiet dignity, but that had never been enough to shield him from suspicion. He'd been stopped while jogging, questioned while grocery shopping, even pulled over 3 times in a single month for fitting a description. Tonight, though, something felt different. The pounding on the door wasn't routine. It was urgent, forceful, and dripping with hostility. When he opened the door, Officer Jack Reynolds stood there, tall, broad-shouldered with a look that could curdle milk. Reynolds had a reputation in town. Everyone knew he was quick to anger, quicker to pull rank, and slower than anyone else to admit fault. He was the kind of officer who patrolled not for protection, but for power. And for Marcus, tonight he looked like trouble incarnate. "You Marcus Daniels?" Reynolds barked. Marcus nodded calmly, though his pulse thudded against his ribs. "That's me. What's this about?" Reynolds smirked as if he'd been waiting for this exact moment. He shoved a file folder forward, papers jutting out as though they'd been ripped from somewhere they didn't belong. "Got your case right here. Thought you could hide, huh?" Marcus frowned. He didn't have a case. Not one pending, not one past. He worked as a mentor for at-risk youth, volunteered at his church, and carried a spotless record. The idea of his name being tied to any legal case was absurd. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, his voice firm but respectful. "I haven't been charged with anything. I've done nothing wrong." But Reynolds wasn't here for the truth. He was here for intimidation. "You people always say that," the officer muttered, flipping open the folder with an exaggerated motion. He scanned the papers with a smug grin, as if enjoying every second of dangling authority over Marcus's head. But then something changed. The grin faltered. His brow furrowed. The confidence drained from his face like water leaking from a cracked cup. Marcus watched him closely. "What's wrong, officer?" he asked quietly. Though inside his chest, his heart was pounding with both fear and a strange flicker of hope. Reynolds' eyes darted across the page. He flipped to another, his hands trembling ever so slightly. For the first time, Marcus noticed the sweat gathering at the edges of the man's hairline. Whatever he was reading, it wasn't what he expected, and it was cutting him deeper with every line. This can't be right," Reynolds stammered. His voice had lost its edge, replaced now by disbelief. "What can't be right?" Marcus pressed, his voice sharpening. Reynolds slammed the folder shut, as if by closing it he could erase what he'd just seen. But Marcus's curiosity burned hotter now. For too long, men like Reynolds had wielded power unchecked, assuming black lives could be twisted, misrepresented, or erased without consequence. Tonight, however, the tables were shifting. "You weren't supposed to see this," Reynolds muttered under his breath, his face pale. Marcus tilted his head, his calm demeanor now mingled with iron resolve. "See what? My so-called case? Or something you weren't supposed to open?" And that's when the words slipped from Reynolds' mouth, words that would forever change both of their lives. "These aren't your papers." "They're mine!" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's confusion gave way to clarity as he pieced it together. Reynolds had come here intending to harass him, to wave around trumped-up accusations, to remind him of his place in a society that too often tried to strip black men of dignity. But instead, he had stumbled into something far more dangerous, for himself. The file he had opened wasn't Marcus's case. It was a termination order. A thick packet of documentation signed and sealed, outlining his misconduct, his repeated violations, his abuse of power, and the department's decision to end his career effective immediately. Marcus's eyes widened, not out of fear but astonishment. Fate, it seemed, had intervened. Reynolds' lips quivered as he tried to regain control. "You don't say a word of this." "You hear me?" His voice was desperate now, almost pleading. "If anyone finds out..." But Marcus cut him off, his voice steady, commanding. "If anyone finds out? Officer, everyone should find out. You came here tonight to break me, but all you've done is expose yourself." Reynolds' hand twitched toward his holster, not in an overt threat, but as if grasping for the last shred of power he still held. But Marcus didn't flinch. He had faced prejudice, suspicion, and cruelty his entire life. This moment wasn't about fear anymore. It was about justice. "You can't ruin me," Reynolds hissed, though his voice lacked conviction. "You already ruined yourself," Marcus replied. His voice was calm, dignified, filled with a weight that Reynolds couldn't carry. The rain outside had grown heavier, pounding against the roof like a drumbeat of truth. For Marcus, it was the sound of vindication. For Reynolds, it was the sound of reckoning. He had come to humiliate a man he thought powerless, only to uncover the very documents that proved his own undoing. Marcus took a slow step closer, his eyes never leaving Reynolds's. "You know what's in that file, officer. You know what it means. Your career, your reputation, it's over. And you brought it right to my doorstep." Reynolds' chest rose and fell rapidly. He looked less like the enforcer he'd always been and more like a man watching the ground collapse beneath his feet. And for Marcus, a realization dawned. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every man, woman, and child who had ever felt the heavy hand of injustice pressing down on them. Tonight, one officer's arrogance had revealed the truth. And that truth could not be buried again. Marcus straightened his shoulders, his voice carrying the quiet strength of generations before him. "This isn't just my fight. It never was. This is about dignity, justice, and the fact that no man, no matter his uniform, is above the truth." Reynolds opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out, because deep down he knew it was over. And Marcus knew it was just the beginning. The file lay between them like a live wire, humming with the weight of revelation. Reynolds' knuckles were white as he clutched it, as if the sheer grip of his hand could hold back the inevitable truth. Marcus, on the other hand, stood tall, his chest rising with calm breaths. For the first time in a long time, the power dynamic had shifted, and the officer who had come to intimidate him now looked like a man cornered. "Give me the file," Reynolds demanded, his tone sharp. But his voice betrayed the tremor beneath it. Marcus didn't move. "Why? So you can bury it again? Shred it, pretend it never existed? That's not going to happen." Reynolds' eyes darted around the room, the paranoia of a man who had suddenly lost control. He stepped forward, his boots thudding heavily against the wooden floor. Marcus didn't step back. "You don't understand," Reynolds growled. "If this gets out, my career is finished. Everything I've worked for, everything you've abused," Marcus interrupted, his voice firm. "All the stops, the threats, the harassment. How many times have you treated people like me as less than human? Just because you could hide behind a badge? This file is justice, officer. It's not mine to protect. It's mine to reveal." Reynolds' jaw tightened, and for a moment, Marcus saw the flicker of rage resurface. The same rage that had driven the officer to Marcus's door in the first place. But there was something else there too, fear. The kind of fear that strips away arrogance and leaves a man exposed. "You don't know what you're stepping into," Reynolds said. "This isn't just me. If you push this, you'll make enemies you can't even imagine." Marcus's heart pounded, but he didn't let it show. He had heard warnings like this before, whispered in different forms throughout his life. Don't speak up. Don't rock the boat. Don't challenge the system. But silence had never brought dignity, and tonight he refused to bow to fear. "I've been making enemies since the day I was born black in America," Marcus said evenly. "That hasn't stopped me yet." The words landed heavy, and Reynolds flinched, not at the defiance, but at the undeniable truth in them. For a brief second, neither man spoke. Only the steady rhythm of rain against the windows filled the room. Marcus finally reached for his phone, his thumb hovering over the camera icon. "Maybe the world should see this," he said, nodding toward the file. "Maybe it's time someone tells the story you tried to hide." Reynolds lunged forward, grabbing Marcus's wrist, his grip rough, desperate. But Marcus stood firm, his eyes locked on the officer's. He didn't yank away, didn't struggle. He simply held Reynolds' gaze until the man's strength faltered. Slowly, Marcus pulled his arm free and stepped back. "You think you can destroy me with a few papers?" Reynolds spat, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Marcus said. "You destroyed yourself. These papers just prove it." For the first time, the officer seemed to shrink in the space. His broad shoulders slumped, and the weight of years of misconduct appeared to press down on him. Marcus watched him, his mind racing. He knew this wasn't over. A man like Reynolds wouldn't walk away quietly. Later that night, Marcus sat alone at his kitchen table, the file still in his possession. He had locked the door, triple-checked the windows, but unease lingered like a shadow. The papers inside detailed a pattern of abuse, excessive force, Unlawful stops, falsified reports, complaints that had piled up but never reached the light of day. Until now. Marcus knew he had a choice. He could keep the file hidden, protect himself, and avoid the storm that was sure to follow. Or he could speak up, risk the backlash, and ignite a fire that might finally burn through the lies that had shielded men like Reynolds for far too long. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from his sister, Alicia. You okay? Been hearing some rumors about Reynolds tonight. Call me. Marcus hesitated, then typed back. I'm okay, but things are about to get complicated. When he called her, Alicia's voice was sharp with worry. Marcus, I know you. I can hear it in your tone. What happened? He hesitated only for a second before telling her everything. The knock at the door, the folder, the discovery. Her silence on the other end was heavy, but when she spoke, her voice carried strength. You can't keep this to yourself, she said. If you don't stand up now, Reynolds will bury it. He'll twist it, make you the villain like they always do. But if you're careful, if you let the truth speak for itself, Marcus, this could change everything. Marcus closed his eyes. He could see her words clear as day, painted in the history of their family, grandparents who had marched for civil rights, parents who had endured segregation, a brother who had once been stopped and frisked, so violently he'd never walk the same again. You're right, Marcus said softly. This isn't just about me. The following morning, Marcus drove to the community center where he worked. The streets were slick from the storm, and as he parked, he caught sight of a patrol car in his rearview mirror. His chest tightened. For a split second, he thought Reynolds had come back to silence him, but when the car passed, Marcus realized his paranoia was proof. Enough of how dangerous the truth he carried had become. Inside the community center, he shared the story with a trusted colleague, Reverend James, a man who had been a father figure to Marcus since his teens. The Reverend listened without interruption, his lined face grave, his eyes steady. You've been chosen for this moment, son, the Reverend finally said. Not because it's easy, but because you have the strength to see it through. The question is, are you ready for the fight that comes with it? Marcus nodded, though his stomach churned. I don't have a choice. If I stay quiet, Reynolds wins. If I speak, maybe the truth wins. The Reverend placed a hand on his shoulder. Then speak. But do it wisely. Document everything. Share it with people who can't be silenced. Don't carry the weight alone. Marcus left the center that day with renewed determination. He scanned copies of the file, uploading them to a secure drive. He shared them with Alicia and Reverend James, ensuring that even if something happened to him, the truth would survive. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of orange and crimson, Marcus received an unexpected call. It was an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. Daniels, the voice rasped on the other end. It was Reynolds. Marcus stiffened. How did you get this number? You think you're safe? You think you can ruin me? You don't know who you're messing with. Drop it now or you'll regret it. Marcus's hand tightened around the phone, but his voice remained calm. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Reynolds. The truth is bigger than you. Bigger than me. And it's coming, whether you like it or not. The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence, the weight of what was coming pressing down on him. He knew the officer's desperation made him dangerous, but he also knew there was no turning back. Because this wasn't just his fight anymore, it was everyone's. Marcus barely slept that night. His phone lay on the nightstand, glowing every few minutes with new messages from Alicia, from Reverend James, even from neighbors who had caught whispers of Reynolds' behavior. Word was spreading faster than he could contain it, and though fear clung to him, a deeper strength grew alongside it. The truth was no longer just in his hands, it was beginning to ripple outward. By morning, Marcus made his choice. He dressed in his best suit, a dark navy jacket with sharp shoulders, and drove to the courthouse. He carried the folder under his arm like a shield. The courthouse stood tall and imposing, a building where countless lives had been reshaped by justice or by its absence. For Marcus, walking up those steps wasn't just about submitting evidence. It was about reclaiming dignity. Inside, he asked to meet with the county's internal affairs office. The clerk eyed him cautiously, but when Marcus slid the file forward, her expression shifted. She skimmed the first page, then the second, her brows rising with each line. Without a word, she disappeared into the back. 15 minutes later, Marcus found himself sitting across from two investigators. Their faces were tight, professional masks, but even they couldn't hide the shock flickering in their eyes as they read. "Where did you get this?" one asked. Marcus told them the truth, how Reynolds had shown up at his door, brandishing the file like a weapon, only to reveal his own undoing. The investigators exchanged glances. One leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Mr. Daniels, what you've brought us is serious. It confirms what's been whispered in this department for years. But if we move on this, it won't just be about Reynolds. Others will go down with him. Are you prepared for the backlash?" Marcus felt the weight of their words, but he didn't hesitate. "I'm prepared for the truth. That's all I've ever wanted." They nodded, closing the folder with care. "We'll handle it from here. But for your own safety, stay vigilant." When Marcus left the courthouse, the air felt different. Lighter somehow, though charged with tension. He knew Reynolds wouldn't stay silent, not while the ground crumbled beneath him. That evening, as Marcus returned home, a crowd had gathered outside his building. Neighbors, church members, and young people from the community center, all waiting. They erupted in applause when they saw him. Some clapped him on the back, others hugged him, tears in their eyes. "You did what we couldn't," an elderly woman whispered, clutching his hand. "You stood up." Marcus swallowed hard, emotions rising in his chest. He hadn't expected this. He had thought exposing Reynolds would bring isolation, maybe even danger. But instead, he saw solidarity. For once, his community wasn't just surviving injustice. They were standing together against it. But Reynolds wasn't done. The next day, a local news station ran a story. Officer Jack Reynolds under investigation, following shocking file leak. The segment was brief but damning, flashing words like misconduct, abuse of power, and termination papers. Reynolds' face appeared on the screen, pale and tight with anger. Marcus watched from his living room, Alicia sitting beside him. "It's out now," she whispered. But the celebration was cut short when Marcus's phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Reynolds. It was a journalist. "Mr. Daniels, we've confirmed your name tied to the discovery. Would you be willing to go on record? People deserve to hear this from you." Marcus hesitated. He knew stepping into the public eye meant opening himself to scrutiny, criticism, and retaliation. But he also knew silence had never protected him before. "Yes," he said finally. "I'll speak." That night, Marcus appeared on live television. The studio lights were hot against his skin, but he spoke with clarity and conviction. He described how Reynolds had come to intimidate him, how the officer's arrogance had backfired, and how the file revealed years of corruption. He didn't shout, didn't dramatize. He simply told the truth, letting the weight of it do the work. Across town, Reynolds watched from his home, fists clenched. The walls that had protected him for so long, his badge, his connections, his silence, were collapsing in real time. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. Within days, protests erupted. Peaceful, determined gatherings filled the streets outside the police department. Signs rose high. Justice for all. No more silence. Dignity has no color. Marcus stood among them, not as a lone man fighting his own battle, but as a symbol of collective strength. Cameras flashed, chants echoed, and for the first time in years, the community felt their voices carried weight. Reynolds was suspended, then officially terminated. The news broke like a thunderclap, and though some officers grumbled, many in the department quietly admitted relief. His reign of intimidation had ended, and now he faced possible charges. The night Marcus heard the announcement, he sat on his porch staring at the stars. Alicia joined him, a quiet smile on her face. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it," Marcus corrected, his voice thick with emotion. "This was bigger than me, bigger than Reynolds. This was about every time we were told to stay quiet, every time dignity was stolen from us. Tonight we got a piece of it back." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was full of pride, of sorrow, of generations of struggle carried into the present.